I got a perfect 36 on my ACT, and over the last 6 years, I've helped thousands of students to get to their dream scores as well. Now in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the reasons why your ACT prep just isn't working, and why you're putting in hours, but you're not seeing the score improvement that you should be. There are 3 main reasons why I see some students' preparation not working, and we're going to dive into each one of these, talking about what the problem is and how you can fix it, so that you can stop wasting your time on ineffective preparation, you can get a great ACT score, and then eventually you can put the test behind you and never have to worry about it again. So the first mistake that I see students making in their preparation is not learning from your mistakes. And there's a great definition of learning that I heard recently that has really kind of stuck with me over the past couple weeks. And that is that if you are presented with the same conditions and you have the same action, you have the same response to those conditions, then you have not learned anything. I heard this great example from Alex Hormozy, so give him credit for this. But if I hold up a red flag in front of your face and then I slap you, I've now given you a condition. I've held up the red flag and then I've slapped you. So if I do that one time, I hold up a flag and then I slap you in the face, and then a day later, we come back to the same situation and I hold up a flag in front of your face and you duck when I try to slap you, then you have learned something. But if I hold up that same flag on the second day and I slap you again and you don't do anything differently, then you haven't learned anything. So that's the definition of learning. We need to be presented with the same conditions, the same red flag, and you need to duck or at least do something differently in order to have learned something. It's the same thing with the ACT. What I see a lot of times with students' preparation is that they get a question wrong and then they don't actually do much to prepare for it. Maybe they listen to somebody telling them what the right answer is, but they don't actually think for themselves about what do I need to do on the next time I see this question type in order to actually get this question correct. So the way that you fix this is you really go in depth on the questions that you're missing. Figure out what type of question it is that you just missed, and then spend some time figuring out why you missed that question. Did you miss it because you didn't understand the concept, you didn't understand the rule, or maybe you didn't understand the strategy or the approach to reading that type of question and understanding what it was asking? Either way, we need to spend time figuring out why you missed that question and then go ahead and practice similar question types. So really, you shouldn't be moving on from that question that you just missed until you can prove to yourself that you can get a similar question correct without having any help. So you want to start by diagnosing the problem, figuring out what you missed, trying to learn that concept through whether it's understanding the rule or coming up with a new approach, and then work on similar question types until you don't get that question wrong anymore. So let's say you miss a right triangle question on the math section. What you want to do is understand why you missed it. Did you not understand the SOHCAHTOA rule? Did you not understand the a squared plus b squared equals c squared? Whatever it is, you need to learn that rule for why you missed the question. And then you take notes on that. You write down, okay, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Maybe you practice on some similar basic questions from the internet. And then what you want to do is practice similar questions from the ACT and the way that they ask that question. Not just the question that you missed, but you want to find similar questions that they ask maybe on a different test, a different practice, and then take the concepts that you just learned from your notes that you just took, and then see if you can solve that similar question type from a different test and actually get it correct this time. And that's what you want to do before you move on to any other concept. So yes, it is a long process of actually learning, but that's what learning is. Learning is not easy. It takes time. But once you have done this process, that concept will stick with you for a lot longer and you won't have to cover that one again. So it's just, okay, we've covered that right triangle question. Now we don't really have to worry about right triangle questions anymore because you have learned. So that pretty much covers the first reason there and how to fix it. Now the second reason that I see people messing up on their preparation is because they're not focused enough. They're spreading themselves too thin and they're not dedicating enough time specifically to ACT preparation. A lot of students think that it's just good enough to spend maybe 1 hour a week doing practice work and then maybe 1 hour a week working with an instructor or some sort of somebody to help them out, or maybe spending 1 hour a week on practice questions and 1 hour a week reviewing those practice questions. 1 or 2 hours a week is not enough to make any significant progress. Even if you learn concepts, even if you are doing the learning process that we talked about in step 1, what you're going to do is learn a little bit, but as you're learning, you're also forgetting stuff that you learned maybe 6 weeks ago or so. There's a constant inflow of knowledge that you're learning, but there's also a constant outflow of knowledge that you're forgetting because it's been so long since you learned that concept from a while ago. So this is what leads to students taking one step forward in one area, but then taking one step back in another area and ending up at a complete wash. Or even taking one step forward in one area and two steps back in another area and ending up worse than they were when they started. So what we have to do to solve this is come up with a dedicated plan over probably a shorter period of time where you can cut out all of your distractions, cut back on some of your other extracurriculars that aren't as necessary, that you're only doing to try and impress people or only doing because you think it may help you get into college. Figure out what some of your lower priority items are and kind of cut those out and dedicate yourself for a set period of time to prioritizing ACT preparation. Ideally, we're spending somewhere between 8 and 15 hours a week on ACT prep. That's what I've seen will work best for students over a short period of time. Another little tip here that you can do is actually just focus on only a couple sections of the test at one time. So if you can't dedicate 15 hours a week to studying for the test, and you need to be on that lower end of the hours per week, then focus maybe only on one or two sections of the test for one given test date. Because of the way that super scoring works, if you can get a great focus score on just maybe math and reading or something, you pick your one or two sections or maybe two or three sections to focus on, you can get a great score in those couple areas while ignoring one or two sections of the test so you're not spreading yourself too thin. Then you can keep those scores that you did very well on and then kind of set those sections to the side the next time that you prep for the test. So let's say for the June test, you only have a little bit of time to dedicate. Maybe you want to focus on math and reading and then get a great score on math and reading. For June, set those scores to the side, keep them because you can super score them. And then for the July test, you want to prep for, if you just did math and reading, then we'll have to do English and science for those. For that July test. And this can be a great strategy because you're not spreading yourself too thin. You're really focusing on those one or two sections of the test. It doesn't really matter that knowledge is going out of your brain from the other sections that you're not focusing on at that time. So then the third reason that I see preparation not working is that a lot of students have just too many different voices that they're trying to listen to all at the same time. I see it happening all the time, even with students that I work with, where we'll discuss a great approach for that student to try out on the reading section. And a lot of times it may be uncomfortable at first, but we'll say, hey, let's try this strategy out for the reading section. Maybe uncomfortable, but we'll see how it goes over the next 2 weeks. We'll do a couple different practice tests, and if it doesn't get more comfortable for you, if you don't see your score improving or you don't see your timing improving, then we'll go with something else and we'll try something else out. And they'll stick with that approach for maybe one day and they'll do one practice test with it. And then all of a sudden they'll go to school the next day and they'll hear their friend talking about this other great reading strategy that they have. Maybe they're going to try and skip reading the passage on the reading section and just do something weird where they try and answer the questions without even reading it. Or they hear their English teacher saying that they need to in-depth read all of the reading questions and then answer the questions from there. Whatever it is, that student comes back and they've done one thing on one day, then they are now trying out something entirely new from their friend the next day, and then 2 days later they're trying that strategy out from their English teacher. And they're not actually focusing on one strategy that they're going to get really good at. Again, this is where students a lot of times will take one step forward and then one or two steps backwards because they're not practicing one thing over and over again. The best way to get good at anything, whether it's the ACT or really anything in life, is to pick one strategy, one approach to working on something and honing that skill over and over again until it becomes bulletproof and until it becomes second nature for you. If you only try it out for 1 or 2 days at a time, and then you are switching to what your friend says, and then you're switching to what your English teacher says, and then you're listening to your mom and your dad and everyone saying different things, you're just going to be all over the place. And again, you're going to be taking that one step forward, maybe one step back, and you're just going to be completely lost and you're going to be in the same situation that you were when you started out. What we really need to do is pick one voice that you're going to listen to and work with that for a set period of time where you're going to measure your progress. And if after a couple of weeks you don't see any progress being made, like I said, what I typically do with students is try out a strategy for maybe a couple weeks at a time and measure our progress. If we're not making progress and we're not getting better timing or scoring wise or comfort wise, then we'll pick a different strategy. But you need to stick with an approach and really work on it, give it your all for at least a couple weeks, at least 1 or 2 weeks before you make that determination of, okay, now I need to pivot and maybe think about trying a different strategy. So basically pick one plan and stick with it for a set period of time where you're gonna measure your progress. And that's how we can avoid the mistake of being pulled in too many different directions and not making any progress because of it. So that pretty much covers all 3 of the main reasons why I see students not really making progress, even though they're putting in a lot of hours to try and prep for this test. So Just a quick recap. We want to make sure we're learning from our mistakes. We want to make sure we're creating a focused plan where we can dedicate a certain number of hours and prioritize the ACT. And then third, we want to pick one approach and trust the process for a set period of time where you can measure your progress and make sure that you're actually improving before you pivot and pull yourself in all different directions. So you can use all this information to just make sure you're not wasting your time. I wasted a lot of my own time back when I was preparing for the ACT. My goal is to make sure that other people aren't wasting their time as well. That's what I try and do for free with all of these YouTube videos and everything. But if you want to see what it would be like to have me personally lay all of this out for you and work with you in an individual capacity, then you can go ahead and apply to work with me at the link down below this video somewhere. Everything is customized to each student that I work with. So we'll have a strategy call first just to make sure we're on the same page and that we're a good fit and we can lay out a good plan before we move forward and do anything. You can also just use all of the free resources that I put out here on YouTube and over on Instagram as well. There's a lot of good stuff over there. Check out both of those. You can go through a lot of the old videos, both here on YouTube and on Instagram. There's a lot of good information that I've put out, and stay tuned for more stuff that I'm putting out in the future. Everything's gonna have to do with beating the ACT, getting the highest score possible, and also a lot of stuff on college admissions and earning the most scholarship dollars that we possibly can. So if that stuff is interesting to you, stay tuned, check out both channels, and I'll see you soon.